This is the Perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah!
Jarvis, using guardrails is transforming my client meetings.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host and co-founder, Micah Shalansky, and with me, as usual, the legendary Matthew Jarvis.
Micah, it's good to see you again. While these episodes come out every single week, right? We do them in batches, and so you and I have not done an episode for several weeks because we've been in surge. And as the jokes go, Micah did 87 meetings a week, and I did 12 total or something like that.
Maybe if we average those out, it becomes up with an accurate number, but some concepts. But
makes for a good story.
It is, right? And not to rant too much on the Surge thing, because Surge is transforming the industry, which has been fantastic. It's all about intentionality, right? And it's all about delivering massive value to clients with intentionality. And with that, it goes hand in hand. And I know, Jarvis, one of the things that is a cornerstone in my Surge meetings and with your meetings as well is Buckets Guardrails. And this is something that has just been amazing because it's replaced the old portfolio statement, portfolio performance review you'd have to go through with clients that answered the wrong questions. And in fact, was a little detrimental to clients. I'm going to go that far because especially in down markets, those old portfolio statements that says, hey, the market's this and this is your account's down 20% or 30%, but great news, we haven't lost it all just yet, right? That's not giving the client action. That's not giving them the confidence to stay in the markets longer, to stay convicted to the financial plan longer. And you got to have a system to do that. And for me, meeting with clients, that's buckets.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I would go as far to say that the more time, or there's a direct correlation between the amount of time you're spending talking about markets and performance and the value that you're providing. I guess it's an inverse correlation. So if you're in a client meeting and you're spending the bulk of the time talking about performance and accounts, that's because you're not delivering value. And there's nothing else to talk about, right? The default is let's talk about the market in the absence of value. And so if you find yourself talking, and I've had to work with Alex on my team with this, if you find yourself talking a lot about investments, about the market, about performance, about the economy, those are all red flags that there's an absence of value.
You know, these are all, it's such a great red flag that's there, right? I want things in client meetings that clients can control, things that they can take action on, right? What is the Fed going to do with interest rates? You know what? Here's the political joke that I give to clients. This is kind of a standard one. I only have two. One of them says, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Client, the problem with this administration, it's the same as the last. They just don't return my phone calls, right? I got great ideas. And the clients laugh a little bit. And if one of them is a little sketchy, I'm like, hey, it's as far political as I go. But then we start talking a little bit about that because it clearly shows that things are outside of our control. And it gives a little levity to it. Then I want to bring it back with things they can control, Jarvis. I'm just about to do this for the PYFR planner for Federal Retirement Channel. Is saying, hey, in a highly inflationary time, when the markets are down, my clients that are doing great know their cash flow. Hands down. The ones that know their cash flow, they know generally where their money's going on a monthly basis. They're good with money. They're doing fantastic, even with hyperinflationary times, even with down markets. Clients that don't know their cash flow, they're having more challenges. Okay, well, why does that matter? Because Buckets and Guardrails helps with the cash flow, right? And cash flow is the cornerstone. Cash flow is the heartbeat of retirement. So this is such an important piece you got to go through with your clients.
Yeah, it also takes away this game of chicken, if you will, with the markets, right? A client is, when the markets are going down, and it doesn't matter that they're going down from some inflation sugar high of 2021, right, which is a line we use with clients. That doesn't really matter. What matters is they're looking at this train oncoming. The train is called, I'm going to run out of all my money in retirement and die, right? Yeah. And most advisors are saying, don't worry, the train's not coming that fast. Don't worry, the train will turn before it hits us. And the client is saying, not a chance. But when you have guardrails and buckets, you're saying, great news, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Here is where we make adjustments. Here's where we don't make adjustments. Here is where we do make adjustments. Micah, to your point, here is what we can control, and that is what we're going to control.
You know, Jarvis, and I got to give you credit for this because what I never had on my buckets report until we met was the lower benchmark, right? That was there to say, hey, what happens when the market goes below a certain point? What is our action plan? I never really had that in there. And I really like that. I took that from you off of the Guardrails report that says, hey, here's the lower benchmark that says, if our portfolios go below X, here's our plan. And clients really like that because it removes the unknown, right? Especially in down markets. When up markets, it's like, yeah, whoop-de-doo, whatever. But in down markets, we're like, hey, look, you know what? Great news. You're still over $1 million and change your investments. If we drop below 850,000, we're going to take an income reduction, drop over that more than a year. We're going to take an income reduction, and here's the dollar amount, right? And we're prepping clients for it. And you can see them get relaxed in the meetings when you go through this because they know there's a plan in place. And you want to talk about adding value to investments? I don't know how you're adding value to your ETF management, right? We could argue that one all day long. You want to talk about adding value to investments? That adds value to investments. We build retirement portfolios for clients. I'm not about chasing returns. I'm about chasing cash flow. I want to make sure clients can have the cash flow they need in retirement. And that's what Buckets and Guardrails gives you.
Well, Mike, I know this is true in your practice as well because we compare notes constantly. When I meet with clients, right, whether it be in person or virtually, I always end every meeting, clients or prospects, and I say, hey, which ones of these pieces of information would you like to take home with you? And which ones would you like me to shred? And of course, we have to add recycle because we're on the left coast. Which ones would you like me to shred and recycle for you? And Micah, every single time the client says, I'll just take this one, and it's the guardrails. Now, some clients feel obliged to take everything, right? There's those kinds. The ones who just are selective, they always take guardrails. And the first question every time they call in is, Matthew, where am I in my guardrails? And then to your point, Micah, that's a dollar figure. Mr. and Mrs. Client, your portfolio is at a 980,000. As long as we stay above 800,000, we're good to keep distributions. But great news, if we hit 800,000, we're going to go from $4,500 a month to $4,000 a month. Is that okay with you? And of course, they say, yeah, that's great. That's exactly what I needed to know.
I love it. When I'm presenting buckets, one of the things that I go and I show in the report, and I agree with you, right? This is the presentation that clients like. Now, if you're having an issue generating these, we are super excited. I have been beta testing during the search process the new launch of our value add toolkit, and it is fan-friggin-tastic. I was kind of happy with the last one. I'm really happy with this one. And my team is elated with this new launch, by the way, because it saves them so much time in preparations. They can now quickly, for the entire week of appointments. So I have 30 plus, just myself, I got 35 appointments on my calendar, plus the rest of the team. We're pushing about 100 clients coming in inside of a week, and they can very quickly generate all of the reports needed for client meetings. So it's a really cool toolkit that we're working on. All right, there's your teaser on that. But one of the things that I love about it, Jarvis, is I present buckets, and I said, great news, Mr. and Mrs. Client. This report tells us two really important things, right? Now, sometimes our clients are going to want information in advance. If I can do it, if I had my druthers, I wouldn't send them the buckets in advance if it was a Zoom meeting, et cetera. I would present it to them and then send it to them afterwards. Because if you give them a report out of context, even the simplified buckets and guardrails, they don't really know how to read it. And so we got to explain it. So this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, great news, Mr. and Mrs. Client. This report tells us two really important things. It tells you how much assets you have, which is great, but that's not the first really important thing. The first really important thing is how much money can you safely take out of your investments for the rest of your life and never outlive your money. And that's 5% a year of our dynamic distribution. And this is how much it is in dollar amounts. I lead with percents, then I go right to the dollar amount, right? Because they always have that question that's going to come in. What does the percentage mean? How does this work? And how does it go through? And so I want to go directly to dollar amount. That's the first thing I want to answer. Then the second thing I want to answer says the second most important thing that this report is going to show us is, where do you get your money from? So now we know how much you're going to get. You're going to get $5,000 a month out. But where does that come from? And now I'm going to show them the cash bucket. Now I'm going to show them the income bucket. And it says, yeah, our growth bucket, remember, that's our long-term bucket. Yeah, that bucket is down. Yep, it's a roller coaster. It's up and down. Right now it's down more than up, but that's okay because we're not taking any money out of that account. We're taking money out of our cash accounts. We're taking money out of our income account. Mr. and Mrs. Client, where retirees get killed in a down market is they sell when the market is down. Great news. Your plan was set up for a down market and you don't have to sell in a down market.
Yeah, those are all, boy, just such critical communication tools to use with a client. I want to draw out something there. You mentioned lead with percentages and then immediately go to dollars.
Yes.
Clients do not understand percentages, right? And that's not any disrespect to clients. It's just not where they think, right? I mean, if I go to my doctor and he starts rattling off the medical term for every medication he's prescribed, I would have no idea. Same with percentages. We always go to dollars. And of course, Micah, where percentages are the absolute worst is probability of success. Mr. and Mrs. Client, don't worry. You have a 72% probability of success. Micah, by the way, this is why I created the guardrails. I couldn't, with confidence, I felt like it was disingenuous to sit down with a client and say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, you have a 72% probability of success. And they would say, is that enough? And I would say, I don't even really know, actually. It's just what the number. Well, what assumptions went into that? I really have no idea. I needed to be able to say, here's exactly what we do. Same, and we talk about this in good markets. Hey, I'd like to pull out $100,000 for whatever. Well, that takes you down to 69%. Now what do we do? Oh, you're either within the guardrails or you're not. You're within, we're good. You're out, we need to make a change.
Yeah, and I still love that in taking out the large sums of money, right? Because the client's like, great, I want to gift some money. Well, fantastic. We get a look at the distribution, and with it, on the report, it says you're current and available, which is fantastic. So we can look at current and available, and we can say, hey, with your current distributions, there's an extra I was working with a client last night. They have phenomenal pensions, $150,000 a year, plus their Social Security coming in, and $3.5 million investments, and it costs them $9,000 a month to live. Quick math, they got plenty of money, right? And so they can spend about $14,000 a month on their bucket distribution, and we're giving that all to charity. And so it's not just from the spending side, it's also from the tithing and giving side, because now I get to see, hey, look, there's some availability here of some extra money. Do we want to make the world a better place? You got it in your estate plan. Do you want to do this today while we're alive? And then they kind of like the idea, but they're still worried about running out of money. So then we'll set up another account for them, and we'll just nickname it charity account. It's not really a charity account, right? It's just nicknamed charity, and we'll put it as an IRA, and we'll start moving money into that account every single month from one IRA to the other. Why? Because I want to show the clients they don't need that money, and I want to show them that it works. And then all of a sudden they're like, holy crap, I can really give this amount of money away. I can give 60, I can give 100 grand away. And clients get really, really excited about that. And it's really exciting to work with them in their passions and things that they're committed to and be able to see that impact while they're alive.
But Mike, these are so many examples that highlight the critical importance of having a network of other advisors who are performing at the level that you want to perform at, right? I mean, you and I just rattled off. Now, people that haven't noticed for a long time may not notice that Mike and I are like, our practices have evolved, right? We have these independent practices. And now, I'm doing guardrails / buckets, and Mike is doing buckets / guardrails. And someday we'll unify the terminology there. But we learned that from spending time with other advisors delivering at the top level, right? There's this old saying that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Same with your advisory practice. Who are the advisors you're spending time with, and what are you picking up? What are you learning from them?
Yeah, that's so critical, right? Because there's always these great tips, these great things that we can pick up from other advisors and how to present things. And I've got tons of things from a mastermind, right? Whether it's Matthew Doherty, Henley, Brandt, etc. There's all these great guys that I've gotten these really good tips for. And it's just this one thing. And it's like, you know what? I never approached it that way. And it wasn't some fundamental transformative new planning technique. I mean, I've been doing this for 22 years. I don't know everything, but I've heard a lot of stuff, right? Yep. And so it's just the one little angle about how I can apply this, which is just fantastic. And for me, Bucket and Guardrails, I mean, that is such a great thing. And again, I get so passionate about it, Jarvis, because I was working with a new client, and they had all of their money invested in the market, right? And they're going to retire in about 2 years. And so it worked out really well until it didn't. And now their portfolio is down 28% as of yesterday when I was chatting with him. Yep. And he's like, well, hey, I want to retire in this year, but I need to fill up my cash bucket, as you were talking about, for distributions. Do I sell out now when I'm down 30%, or do I wait until the market recovers? That's a hell of a question to try to answer, right? Because what is the market going to do? Whatever I tell him to do, the market's going to do the opposite, by the way. If I told him to wait, market's dropping 50%. If I tell him to get out now, it's going to recover tomorrow, right? So it's like, how do you answer these questions? Well, the really cool tool is we're going to bust out Buckets and Guardrails and say, hey, look, this is how it needs to get set up, and this is how it's going to work even with your accounts being down 30%. So it gives us objective point of view to talk about those distributions, and it's really help with those clients.
Yeah, it does. And as we talk to more and more advisors around the industry, right? We have dozens of advisors guests on the podcast. We talk to thousands of advisors around the industry. Right? We're seeing this real divergence happen between advisors who understand this concept of delivering massive value, which is a fun catchphrase, right? And it's the title of my book. But to really say this is what is valuable in a practice versus this is kind of just Like, let me show you another Monte Carlo illustration. And there's this divide happening in the industry. And those advisors who understand how to deliver value, and of course, Micah, have the systems to do it, those advisors are not only are they exempt from fee compression, they're delivering so much value that they can easily warrant raising their fees. They're having an easy time taking on new clients. When they sit down with a prospect, when I sit down with a prospect, Micah, and they've talked to another advisor and the other advisor gave them the 4% rule or 72% probability of success, and I present guardrails on one page, it's a slam dunk. In fact, it's so much of a slam dunk that they start to get a little bit suspicious. They say, wait a second, how are you able to distribute so much more than this other advisor? And Micah, my response is always, you know what, this is a lot of work. I know I've put it on a one piece of paper. It's actually a lot of work to implement guardrails. That's why you almost never see it anywhere else, because they don't want to do that kind of work.
Well, boy, that's a really great way to say it. That's not how I phrased it. I might have to snag that one from you, because I generally look at it and say, hey, there's two different trains of thought in the industry, right? One of them is train of thought in this industry of this 3% or this 4% distribution rule, and here's the math with it. The problem is that just doesn't work. I was like, great news is this is how Buckets works, and this is how dynamic distributions work, and this is why the math is so important. All right, Jarvis, one question on this before we jump into some great action items. How do you talk about inflation with clients? Because one of the things that I hear back on the Monte Carlo analysis is that, well, with a probability of success, you have all these different inflation things that you're factoring for, et cetera. But in guardrails, you're not factoring for inflation because it just doesn't say it, but you are. So how do you explain that to clients?
Yeah, that's a great one. I explain to clients, and we go back to Guyton and Klinger's original white papers. Guyton originally built dynamic distribution rates around someone retiring in 1973, which I always ask clients, hey, when in the last 100 years was the worst time to retire? And they always say the Great Depression. And I say, yeah, that's what I would think too. But when the Great Depression hit, prices went down dramatically. And we can talk about why that was another day. 1973, the market cuts in half. Inflation goes through the roof for a decade. Worst time to retire. The guardrails were built specifically around that time frame. Now, could this time be worse? It could. Sure. I don't think so. It could be worse. Even if it were, we would just keep hitting that lower guardrail. We would keep making adjustments. And so we're set either way. It won't be great, but we're set either way.
Markets were down, inflation was up. Gee, that's weird.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds very familiar. All right, so this podcast is all about action items. Jarvis, what are a couple action items advisors could take this week to improve their practice?
Yeah, by the time this is coming out, I would imagine everyone's out of surge. The entire industry is sort of kind of coalesced around our surge schedule. But as you're getting ready for your spring surge, right, you really need to be watching how much of my time is spent talking about the markets, the economy, portfolio, relative performance, absolute performance, inflation, those things, versus value that you can control, so value adds. And if you're reflecting back on surge and you're saying, wow, mine was really performance focused, then you need to join the Backstage Pass and Invictus so you can get plugged into our value add program. Mike and I have spent the better part of our entire careers building these, and they are leading the industry, and the advisors that use them are crushing it.
Yeah. So, and that's a good emotional feel, right? If I look back at my client meetings, was I happy and excited going into them, or was I kind of dreading talking about the markets and the economy? That could be an indication. I'm going to say you need to up your game in value adds for your next surge cycle. So that's spring, which would be coming up. If you're not running buckets or guardrails, you need to run which one. If you're not sure which one, buckets is better. It's closer to the beginning of the alphabet, so that's where you start with. But no, it's 6 one, half dozen the other. It's all about how you explain it. But you need to pick one of those. If you don't have a system to generate these automatically, not building a custom for each client, you need to start looking at our toolkit. You need to look at some other systems that are out there to find a way to generate these at mass for your clients and then bring them in. That's what I'm going to challenge you to do in this action item. If you're not doing these, bring it into your client meeting, present the buckets or guardrails, and then present your Monte Carlo analysis, whatever you normally do. Leave them both out side by side. Let the client pick. Let the client pick. See which one every single client is going to pick up, or the most clients are going to pick up and want to take home. That's the winner.
I love it. I love it. Well, and Mike, as you said, this podcast is all about taking action. The final action item, of course, is vote early and vote often. Go ahead and give the podcast 5 stars on Apple or Amazon or Spotify or wherever you are listening to podcasts. Go ahead and post this on social media, your commitment to delivering value to clients. And Micah, until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.